Okay, Shalom Americam, Kal Halalim La Yahaba Shim Yashaba Shem Kakudash, and double honors to the greatest and apostles. Thadi Ha, Thadi Shah for the strength and all to make this video. And Yaratazar, that you're edified, which means you're built up, and that you're exhorted too, which means you're encouraged, in the spirit of Yahaba Shim Yashah. So, this one's the part 3 to the previous video of, Native American history, and then in brackets, Gad and Reuben. Well, this one more so is focusing upon the curses upon Gad and Reuben. Probably a short video, Yaratazar, just to get straight to the point on their history, as well as we're going to touch on just a bit of Esau's atrocities. I'm still reading the book, by the way, Yaratazar. So as I go through the book, Yaratazar, I'm gonna be doing lessons on it as well. It's called Native American History, and the author's Captivating History. You can order it from Amazon. It's not that big of a book. Just a simple book to get your head on some brief history. Of course they get into details as well. So it's not just some brief things, but they get into details too. All right, so I'm gonna start off with this precept here. Then I'm gonna get some accounts from the book. So 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. Now, of course, considering the fact that we're focusing on Gad and Reuben, again, Gad being the Native American Indians, Reuben being the Seminole Indians, which is just, again, a subsect of the Native American Indians. Because Seminole Indians are Native American Indians. We're in a specific region of America, which is Florida to say, and of course the regions around Florida as well. So, point being is that, referring to them, it says, in my people which are called by my name. If we, all in all, as I always repeat, if we were actually obedient to Yahweh Shem Yahushua, we wouldn't have lost the original land, which is of course taken over by the Amalekites right now. Yeah, almost had to hold back a sneeze there. Sometimes sneeze is coming and it doesn't come out. Right, so the point is, Amalek over there, the fake ones over there, are the ones who are imposters and are taking over our land. But because of our disobedience, we were casted away from that land. That's why we need to go through Yahushua in order to get back our land, man, because he is the mediator between Yahweh and, of course, Israel as a whole. So if my people which are called by my name, so the name is essential, Yahweh, wa Yahushua, Yahweh meaning he is, he exists, or he is to be. That's the name of God. And Yahushua meaning he, the deliverer. He's the one who will save us. He saves. He will save Israel. But first and foremost, the elect of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. That's referring to Revelation 14. So, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways. There were many wicked ways of which Gad and Reuben were into. Of course, you had all the tribes got into some form of wickedness, man. We're focusing on this history right now, so I'm gonna just pinpoint that. So it's all the tribes that had their own wicked ways that's implemented, even right now up to this very day. So it says wicked ways, and then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. So, theoretically, through the scriptural reasoning, if all Israel supposedly just said they dropped all forms of wickedness and just turned to Yahweh Shemashai and said Baruch Salakia, then the Most High will hear and then return us back to our land. But that's in the ideal scenario. The point is, the way it's supposed to work is through the elect coming back to Yahushua, and of course through the loins of the elect. That's when Israel's going to be reborn in that righteousness. The elect are essentially like a filter in the kingdom of Yahushua to so that only righteousness is going to be from them, in terms of the seeds of their generations, after the elect is then appointed in their rightful roles as rulers upon this earth, and of course to spread their seed across the universe, man. Hence why the scriptures say, in my house there are many mansions. Let me try and get that Yaratazar. It should be John 15, if I recall correctly. If it were not so, Yahushua would have told us. Alright, let's see if I can find it. If I can't, then I got to search it up quickly. But let's see. Just bear with me. Yeah, I might have to. I just may have to search out. But you know, that scripture where it says, "In my Father's house there are many mansions." I thought it was in John 15. I could be scanning too fast, rather. Alright, hold on. Yeah, this is John 14 and verse 2. I'll start from verse 1. Let not your heart be troubled, ye believe in the Most High Yahweh. Believe also in me. So of course believe also in Yahushua, hence why we say Yahweh Bahashem Yahushua. In my Father's house are many mansions. You know what mansions are? Mansions are mega houses. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. So that mansion, Father's house being the so-called the universe. I say so-called because of course there are ancient Hebrew terms for these names, and those will be revealed in time. But the point is, the Father's house is the universe, and of course those mansions are referred to as planets as well. That's the breakdown of that. So, point being is, trying to recall why I even got that precept now. But the point being is that, damn. I actually genuinely forgot the point that I was supposed to make. But, you know, as I said, the focus, I'm just going to revert back to the focus of the video, which is obviously on Gad and Reuben. You know, and, you know, them worshipping idols, man. Oh, yeah, but the first precept that I was getting, that I did get was Second Chronicles 7 and 15, just to see if I can trigger my memory. Yeah, because I said there, so 2 Chronicles 7 and 14, if my people which are called by my name, that is Yahweh, that's Yahweh's name, yeah, the Most High's name is Yahweh, and obviously his son being Yahushua. It says, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and will forgive their sin, and will heal their land. So of course that's when, and then I mentioned the point of that's when Israelites, you know, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians returning to the land of Israel, which is obviously on earth, but also, oh yeah, I was talking about the elect as well, and then from the elect, from the loins of the elect, that's when the righteous seed, the generations after will just be righteousness, man, because that's through the loins of the elect of whom have been purified. They're in new bodies, they have the laws instilled within them, and every Israelite's going to have the laws instilled within them as well. So of course, that's when I then mentioned, that's why we're going to spread across the planets, man. Hence, John 14 and verse 2. So, Faudia for the revelation of that. Because I genuinely forgot when I was looking for the precept. So, that's just the little point there. So, let me get to, you know, the history, La Historia, which is obviously Spanish for the history. Right, so let's start off with, you know, this is same book again. You know, this one here is in chapter 4, northeastern and southeastern people. You know, that's the chapter right there. So on page, should be 26. You know, we're going to jump around here, but let's see this. In terms of the atrocities of Esau. So this is page 26 of the Native American Indian book, chapter 4, page 26. And on the last paragraph, it says here, however, that was the first time any European made the trip. This is referring to Leif Erikson, which they said actually met Native American Indians, but didn't actually do anything about it. He could have even been a Jake, man. But it is ironic that people largely thought of as Vikings, who are commonly described as barbaric, cruel, and prone to raiding the villages and towns of Europe, were the ones who left the land alone. Clearly, it was a better place for farming and was much easier living than where the Vikings lived at the time. Yet, these people left the new territory alone. So that's the spirit that the Most High put upon the Vikings, man. So, anyways, it says ironically, and I gotta do more research on the Vikings as well, because certain of them I believe were also Jakes too. But again, I gotta do some searching up or dabble into that history too. But I'm focusing on Gad and Reuben right now. Now it says Vikings lived at the time, yet these people left the new territory alone. Ironically, the Spanish, Portuguese, and British who considered themselves so civilized and advanced had practices that were just as barbaric as the people they called savages. So the point is, there was hypocrisy with the Spanish, Portuguese, and British men. The ones who were invading the land of the Americas, they were so-called civilized, but they weren't civilized because they used barbaric techniques. They only call themselves civilized because of Don Clark religion, man. So-called Christianity, which they didn't even follow that to the T anyway. So when I say follow that, they didn't really follow the scriptures to the T. So while the native peoples were trying to defend their traditions and lands, the newcomers slaughtered, stole, and committed genocide against them, largely because of greed. That's why the scriptures say, the thief cometh but to steal, kill, and destroy, man. It is incredibly unlikely that any tribes who encountered Erikson or any of the other people from Greenland, the so-called where the Vikings come from, who would have remembered much of the encounter hundreds of years later. So yeah, the point is really that the Spanish, the Portuguese, the British, the so-called civilized ones, who are trying to say that they civilized it. They didn't civilize the Native American Indians, man. They didn't civilize them. I think the part one I also mentioned, in the earlier chapter, where they actually had hierarchies. Certain of the tribes within the Native American Indians actually had systems in place, order. They had order, so they were civilized. They had a system in place which people could follow, and of course to have that order within the people, in that system. They had the people aside of the Native American Indians, which are more nomadic, which means, of course, they just relied on the resources of the land. They didn't really do much invading, between the tribes. They were just cool, man. They were chill people, as Jake normally is, as Israelites normally are. So that's really the point there. It says here, while the native peoples were trying to defend their traditions and lands, the newcomers, British, Portuguese, Spanish, newcomers slaughtered, stole, and committed genocide against them. So they killed a large number of people. It says largely because of greed. So that's really the point, man. Let's get that precept as well. The one that I brought out in the part 2. So this is John 10:10. The thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. That thief is representative of Esau, Edom, these Edomites. That was literally their role. Hence why they did it to the Native American Indians, and of course to Jake as well. And they're still doing it on a more so psychological level in this modern day. I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly, man. So through Yahushua, that's how we're going to be able to fight Esau, Edom, and actually get rejuvenated from all that drainage that Esau's done to us, man, psychologically and all these spiritual attacks and whatnot. So yeah, let me get another precept here as well, because this is part of the curses that Jake had to go through, man. Even part of that as well. Let me read some more. Let me read some more. Actually, no. I'll get a preset, read some more, then I'm going to get another preset. But I want to keep this straight to the point, man. Get some clarity. So, yeah, just checking. Hold on. Part of the curse is Deuteronomy 28. Should be around verse 25. So Deuteronomy 28 and verse 25. The Lord Yahweh shall cause thee to be smitten, destroyed, basically be punished before thine enemies. Thou shalt go out one way and against them and flee 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. So that's talking about the scattering of Israel because of Esau, Edom invading and slaughtering, as we just read in verse John chapter 10 and verse 10. The thief cometh but to steal, kill, and destroy. That's the point right there. So that's one of the curses, man. Because of that, the Native American Indians, Gad and Reuben, they had to scour, man. They had to scour. And of course, if you actually to go through the lineage of the history from the biblical history, eventually they then ended up in the Assyrian kingdom, if I recall. Because I mentioned this in the part 1 where, from the Assyrian kingdom, and eventually they had to just get out of Samaria, which is where the northern tribe were, and they scattered, man. They scattered. So, because in this book, even in this book alone, there was talking about the ambiguity of how they even ended up there. They ended up there because of, again, I think 2 Kings 17. It's a good chapter to read for that, where they were in Samaria and they had to get out of Samaria. Then that's when they fled to the new lands, presumably. So let's read some more. So I'll remind you again, Spanish, Portuguese, and British, this is what they did. It says, while the native peoples were trying to defend their traditions and lands, the newcomers, Spanish, Portuguese, and British, Edomites, slaughtered, stole, committed genocide against them, largely because of greed. Another act that they did was to kill the food source. So what you normally hear of the Native American Indians is that they had some diseases that were put on blankets that the British were more immune to. Then they gave them blankets, and then obviously God being I don't want to call them gullible, or if that's even the right word, but being subject to that influence, they accepted it, and of course it's essentially Hosea 4 and 6. My people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge. So let's read this now. Verse what chapter is this? So this is chapter 5 now. Chapter 5, where it says this is all about the Native American Indians, the Plains and the Plateau people. As it says, the Plains and Plateau peoples, which again is still the Native American Indians. It says the primary natural resource, here in page 32. So chapter 5, page 32. It says here, the primary natural resource, buffaloes, were an important resource to the native peoples, and every part of a buffalo was used after it was killed, from their skins, used for homes, to their bones, used for tools, to their meat, used for food. Native Americans were very resourceful and appreciative of these large animals. See, so that was the major food source, man. Bisons, buffaloes, as they're going to mention here. The animals were essential to daily lives of the people. So the buffalo were only killed based on the need. So nothing was wasted. Native Americans did not hunt them for trophies, unlike Esau, Edom. Esau likes to hunt just for the sake of it, and kill more than they could use. Hunters would use teepees during the hunts because they were simple to use and easy to set up. Soon the native peoples came to be seen as a hindrance to the Western expansion. The US government, it says the US government took the tactic of slaughtering the greatest resource on the plains. The bison, it says the bison, which is again referring to buffaloes. big meat. That's the thing. So of course, not just for meat, but they use the bones of the buffalo, the bisons, and also they use the skin of it for their homes to keep warmth. It was an intentional act on the part of the U.S. to force the people to give up their traditional way of life. So Esau used the tactic of, okay, we're gonna starve them, man. It's like a modern day siege. No, I said modern day siege. But it's like a siege in the medieval times where they used to surround the castle and essentially they don't leave so that they could starve out the people within the castle. That's essentially what a siege is. So that's what Esau did. He's like, okay, we're gonna remove your major resource, which is the bison, the buffalo, and then we're gonna starve you out, man, so that America, Babylon the Great should start to start growing again. So it's all according to the prophecy, man. Babylon needed to be that high mountain. Of course, Jake had to basically be casted off from that land. Yeah, man. So it was the Most High's will. That's why you had Native American Indians, so-called Gad and Reuben there. But then there was only so much time that they had to utilize the land until, Esau came in and I was like, okay, we gotta build something here. That thing that they were building, that Esau was building, was Babylon the Great, aka America, United States of America. So it's all according to prophecy, man. So Jake couldn't just stay there. It was curses too, but Jake couldn't just stay there. So they used buffaloes, man. Now let me get this precept here. They used Esau Edom used buffaloes to starve out, or to try to starve out, and influence the Native American Indians, Gad and Reuben, to submit to them. Right, let's get this precept. Let's get this precept. So it'll be Amos 1. Amos 1. So this is Amos chapter 1 and verse 11. It says, "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother," the Gad and Reuben being one of the tribes of Israel, therefore meaning they are also a brother of Esau Edom. Because read Genesis 25, the Israelites come from Jacob, the Edomites are descendants of Esau. So I will turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, ongoing anger, that's what perpetual means, and kept his wrath forever. It says, "But I will send a fire upon Teman, which shall devour the palaces of Bozrah." So the point is that hatred of Esau Edom was shown to Gad and Reuben as well. Not just to the southern tribe, where you had the, what's it called? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, man. In the West Indies and the sugar trade, slavery on that, as well as in the cotton fields as well. And yeah, man. The point being is, it wasn't just southern tribe that got the hatred from Esau. Gad and Reuben, and the rest of the northern tribe got it as well. Latin America. I'm gonna touch on that history eventually too. I'm just focusing on Gad and Reuben here. So, Amos 1 and 11. That's what Amos 1 and 11. "Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, for 3 transgressions of Edom, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because he did pursue his brother with the sword, and did cast off all pity, and his anger did tear perpetually, and kept his wrath forever," man. So that's really the point right there, man. On Esau Edom and his atrocities. He used buffaloes. He tried to starve out the Native American Indians, and essentially trying to cut off their main resource, man. Buffalo, bison. That was one thing. And that's what it meant when I mentioned in chapter 4, of page 26, where it mentions about Esau, British, Spanish, and Portuguese slaughtering and killing them, man. So there was a lot of stuff. But even then, it's like the Most High used that as judgment upon Gad and Reuben. And I must say this, because there was a lot of wickedness going on there. So let me mention this as well. There was a lot of wickedness going on there. And this is one of them. This is one of them. That's why the scriptures say in Hosea 4 and 6, Hosea chapter 4 verse 6, my people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge. Now watch this. So they were on something else, man. They were on something else. Now don't get me wrong, as I said before, it's not just the northern tribe, but the southern tribe as well of Israel. Right, so where was I? I was gonna say something. Of course, they were done, man. Now this is in chapter 6, by the way. Just finished reading that recently. It's named the Great Basin and Southwestern Regions. So the Great Basin and Southwestern Regions, man. So this was another portion of land within America. There's the Southwestern Regions of America, USA. So let's get to this. Let's get to it. So one of them, it says food sources were largely what could be found in those very harsh conditions, within the southwestern regions and the Great Basin. Which they say the Great Basin is actually the area of Grand Canyon and Las Vegas. It says there's many other well-known current attractions. Modern day state Texas touched both of these regions. So around Texas, the Grand Canyon and Las Vegas, that was the portion of land of which certain tribes of the Native American Indians were inside of. And when I say tribes of the Native American Indians, I'm talking about sub-tribes of God. I'm not talking about the tribes of Israel, I'm talking about the sub-tribes of God. Anyways, because there were many of them, hundreds. Right. It says food sources were largely what could be found in those very harsh conditions, such as lizards, snakes, and other small animals. So the Mosai had them eating a bugged out diet, man. So we were far from the law. Gad and Reuben, they were far from the law. And again, it's not just them, even modern day times as well, not just modern day times. Jake was far from the law, from Yahweh Shem Yahushua. So they were eating all sorts of shit. They also ate nuts, roots, and seeds. Their homes matched their nomadic lifestyles, and tribes moved with wigwams that were made largely with saplings, leaves, and willow poles. But the point is, they were eating, their diet weren't completely clean. We'll say that. Which means they were unclean. Alright, so let's skip to the part as well. Another bug out moment that I was reading. It says here, again, still chapter 6, This is page, what's that? This is page 36. It says here, latter paragraph, like many other Native American groups, women were seen as equal. So they were bugged out in the mind, man. Scriptures ain't talking about a woman being equal to a man. A woman's not equal to a man. So of course the Mosai truly hit Jake with those curses, man. And I'll show you. Because that's part of the curses right there. The Mosai, where it says, actually hold on, before I get that one, let me get this one here. Hold on. Trying to get that scripture, man. Just bear with me. I'm gonna read it from here. It says, First Corinthians 11:3. But I would have you know that the head of every man is Hamashiach Yahushua, the anointed. That's what Christ means. That's what Hamashiach means. The anointed Yahushua. And the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Hamashiach Yahushua is the Most High Yahweh. So there's an order to these things. There ain't no equality. Yahushua is above us. And then Yahweh is above Yahushua. And of course, we, being men, are above the women. That's just the order right there. That's the scripture. I'm going to read it again. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 11, And verse 3, but I would have you know that the head of every man is Yahushua HaMashiach, and the head of every woman is the man. And the head of Hamashiach Yahushua is Yahweh. And that's the order. Yahweh, Yahushua, the Israelite man, the Israelite woman, then you got the Israelite children. That's the order right there. So there ain't no flipping equality there. Like, I'm going to read it in the book again, man. You know, in this book right here. So it says in chapter 6 of this Native American book, and also on page 36, like many other Native American groups, women were seen as equals. Again, that's not scriptural. And were treated as such, unlike European women and American women. Young people were allowed to explore their sexuality without stigma, which could result in a trial marriage, period. Which, again, all this is just bug out stuff, man. It's bug out stuff because it ain't according to the law. So that's how far the Most High let Jake sway, man. You know, be swaying left away from the law. So if a marriage was not working out, either one of the spouses needed only to return to their parents' home for the couple to be divorced. And that's not how it ought to be, man. Really, the man is the one who can ordain that divorce at the end of the day. He really holds more power to do so, I'll say that. You know, scripturally speaking. You know, you can't just flip and have sex with a woman and then just be like, alright, yep, dumped, gone. You know, pump and dump, as they say nowadays. No. That goes against the scriptures. So given how harsh the terrain was and the reality that women could die in childbirth, women were allowed to marry two men. And that's a falsehood right there. That's a falsehood.